Hello, and bear with me as I attempt to share my thoughts with you all today. Last night I was meditating so much I couldn't sleep, and I was meditating on the description of Ra in Kemetic spirituality, the what's known today as the Egyptian Book of the Dead. I was meditating on the story or the depiction, the description of Ra's journey through different worlds on his boat. Um, so, just as a simple summary of what's going on in Kemetic spirituality, the netter, Ra, um, journeys throughout creation, journeys through different realms on a constant cycle. He moves through the sky, uh, and moves through the underworld. And this is what's depicted in the natural world as the course of the sun throughout the day, where in the morning, Ra comes out of the underworld and he moves through the sky. And then um, at nighttime is when he's in the underworld making his journey. So that's kind of the parallel on a natural sense. And you can always look more into this stuff. Um, I'm going to attempt to describe the connections that I made. And if you're part of the Kemetic community, let me know in the comments. Am I on to something? Am I an idiot? Let me know one way or the other. I want to talk about this more. But I came to the understanding, um, as I meditated on this all night, that the description of Ra's journey is a picture of consciousness, in that this is what we are supposed to be functioning in to a degree. This is the standard that's being upheld. So, consciousness is really just the state of mind that you're in, the state of mind that you function from, whether that be high or low, uh, so on and so forth. But consciousness is key. We all function out of the consciousness that we're currently in. And in order to escape a certain level of consciousness, you have to change to a different consciousness. Um, an example, and I've heard Neville Goddard talk about this, that the principle of salvation happens when you're willing to move a person from one state to another. Consciousness is when we move ourselves from one state to another mentally. So behind me, I have the picture, a nice description of the boat itself, of what I'm trying to describe here. So on the far right, you see Ra seated. He's seated. He's sitting down, and I'm going to go one by one and explain the netters and what they mean, at least in this context. Um, so you have Ra sitting down. Now notice he's seated. He's in a place of rest. He's in a place of authority. Ra represents supreme consciousness. This is the highest state of consciousness, making its journey through creation, through reality. So Ra is seated. You rule from a rested position. Higher consciousness is accessed in rest. In some depictions of this, especially if you look at the Medu Neter or the hieroglyphs on walls and the depictions there, you'll see Ra will also have in front of him oftentimes a lotus flower. The lotus flower, from what I understand, represents ecstatic bliss or divine ecstasy. So he's sitting down, rested, and he high in the spirit. Right? So I noticed the only one facing him is Tahuti. Tahuti is also known as Thoth, but those are the Greek names. Thoth is the Greek name. Tahuti is the Kemetic or Egyptian name. And Tahuti represents divine intelligence. And he represents mathematics, science. He represents writing and all things intellectual, really. He's a genius. He's a master of many studies. He's a scientist. He's a healer. He's a doctor, a medical specialist. He's really a jack of all trades. He means a lot. He's the divine record keeper, just to name a few things. So right before the supreme consciousness is divine intelligence, and they're staring back and forth into each other. To an extent, Tahuti also is a form of divine masculine. Ra, funny enough, is actually a netter that has both masculine and feminine qualities. Whenever you see, from what I understand, a portrayal of a netter and it's a masculine figure, but he also has some kind of cape over his behind his lower half, that means that on occasion there's a feminine principle, which goes to show that the supreme consciousness is both male and female, is both masculine and feminine. So then after Tahuti, there is Ma'at. Ma'at is a netter which represents divine harmony, unity, peace, justice, righteousness, holiness. I'm not going to attempt that word right now, but all things good. This is balance. This is harmony. And then right after that one, there is Het Heru, known by the Greeks as Hathor. This is a depiction of the Divine Mother, but specifically the aspects that deal with nurturing. But what kind of nurturing? Het Heru being the cow netter, represented by the cow, is the mother that's breastfeeding, in a sense. So one of the things that I understand about that is that that's where we get our genetic makeup from. So this also plays as somewhat of a reminder to the divine consciousness of its makeup. Not the who are you, but the what are you. So then we see Set standing on the end, fighting against the serpents on the end of the boat. And Set represents separation. This is the opposer. This is the antagonist. This is the adversary. He's a fighter. He's a foe, which is why he's on the outside. Set, the principle of Set is where Christians eventually got the idea of Satan from. It's a separator. It's an adversary, right? And the adversary isn't a bad thing as long as he's placed in the proper position. Set is fine as long as he's on the outskirts defending, because he's going to fight no matter where he is. So you might as well put him to good use and put him outside of yourself at the outermost end so that he can defend you from external invaders. This netter in action in the physical body represents our immune system, fighting against external forces, keeping the inside safe. So that's just a quick run through of the netters described here. So netters are not gods, they're principles. They all represent things. I probably should have said that earlier, but none of them are gods. They're all principles. They just drew them instead of just saying them. So then we get to the snakes coiling around the boat. And this is what I want to back up to the story a bit. The description, at least, is that while Ra makes his journey through different worlds, when he reaches it, when he goes into the underworld, that's where he battles with Apep. Apep is a giant serpent, extremely long serpent that fights against Ra, and they're seen as enemies. They're depicted as enemies. And Ra pretty much goes into battle every day and comes out victorious. So Apep represents the principles of chaos. So why does a snake represent chaos? And this is something I was meditating on long before last night, but it finally pieces together. I understood that a snake is used, the reason why the snake was used to represent chaos. If you were to look at a still body of water and you take a rock or a pebble and you drop it into the water, it'll form these several layering rings, this ripple pattern. That ripple pattern, if you look at it, kind of looks like a snake coiled up. So it's not just chaos in the sense that you've now disturbed the peace of the water, but it's also a depiction of frequency and energy. So to put that into perspective, the divine consciousness is at odds against energy, frequency. But in what sense? It's natural energy. It's the energy of a lower consciousness. Once again, this is supreme consciousness. This is frequency. This is your mentality. This is your mind. So pretty much what you see here is the divine consciousness going into a lower realm and testing itself against its environment to prove that what's on the inside can remain the same no matter where it goes. So it's really a battle of whether or not we will allow external influences to change our consciousness. So so pretty much wherever you see a snake, that's a depiction of frequency or energy of some sort. Now, an idea that I came to, I'm not sure how true this is. Like I said, I was thinking about this all night. But, well, once again, the reason why a snake is used to represent frequency is that the way that snakes live, they crawl along the ground and their entire body gets imbued uh, with its environment. It carries the frequency, the lowest frequency, mind you, because it's made to move along it. So a simple principle that I've kind of been following as far as artwork is concerned is, where is the snake? Is it coming up from the ground? If so, that means it's frequencies from a lower consciousness coming up to affect the higher consciousness. But if it's a snake coming down, or if it's a snake flying through the air, it's a good chance that it's representing the energy from the divine coming down to change the lower realm. At least that's how I've that's what the conclusion I've come to as of now. So I've kind of broken this away. So when you look back at this picture, you see that the divine consciousness is going into a realm lower than its origin to prove that it is the higher consciousness. But there's something interesting that happens. There's something interesting that I found that happens when Ra makes his way into the underworld. He takes on a different form. The consciousness is still high, but in another realm, it's viewed different. Kind of like the idea of God moving through different dimensions and then becoming what he is around, in that sense. In that, if you were to look at the idea of God coming down into earth, as he passed through the 7 different heavens, each time he reached a realm, he would change form to fit that realm, but maintain his consciousness. So that's kind of what we see here, where Ra no longer is Ra by himself when he's in the underworld. He comes in the form of Khnum. Khnum is a ram-headed deity, is a ram-headed netter, which is the molder, right? As in like a potter, a sculptor, a molder, in that sense. This is equated to kind of how the Father sculpted man from clay, got his fingerprints all over us. So when this supreme consciousness is in the underworld, he's a molder, he's a shaper of reality. Now, this is a conclusion I came to. Once again, if you're more experienced in the community, talk to me. If you agree or disagree, let me know. But I believe that underworld in this concept has nothing to do with the land of the dead. But in relation to the higher consciousness, it's a lower consciousness. Therefore, it's the underworld. This underworld, I believe, is Earth, the natural realm, not the land of the dead, but a land lower than the origins of the higher consciousness. So where many see Khnum as somewhat of an afterlife deity, I don't see him that way. I see Khnum as a principle of the molder shaping man, or shaping creation within creation. So when the higher consciousness comes down into the land of frequency, because the natural world is composed of light, sound, frequency, and vibration, this is the carnal world. He's making sure that none of those frequencies are getting in to affect the boat, to affect the consciousness. But as the higher consciousness, he's making sure that as Kanum in that world, he's the one doing the changing. He's the one doing the affecting. He's shaping reality in his will. And something else that kind of made me think about this whole underworld earth thing, at least in this context, is the idea of Asar. Asar is a principle. Let me see. Do I have a picture of Asar? Yes, I do. Let's see. How smooth was that? All right, that worked well. So Asar is the green guy on the right. This is the father of Heru, the guy on the left. Asar pretty much was the ruler of heaven in a sense until he was killed by his brother Set, who we saw earlier, the guy that likes to fight. And Set separated his body. He killed his brother, chopped him up, and the legend goes that he scattered the pieces all over the desert so that he couldn't be found. I'm skipping a bunch of parts, but by some divine interaction, they managed to resurrect Asar or bring Asar into their realm long enough so that he can mate with his wife and produce Heru. So Asar is kind of like the first to cross between realms, where he's pictured as someone who's rooted in both the spirit and the natural. He's seated in heavenly places, but he also has the ability to interact with the natural world. So he's someone that's somewhat caught between the higher and the lower realms. His son Heru, see, the falcon is a symbol of higher consciousness in itself. It's for those of you who think like this, the Bible says, set your mind on things above. Heru is a picture that represents setting your mind on things above. His head is a falcon. Falcons are in the sky. I even believe that the eyes of Heru, or Heru consciousness, represents cosmic awareness to an extent, because it has keen vision, but it sits up high and looks low. So the picture of Heru is that of a person whose head is in heaven, but his body is functioning on earth, where he's staying divinely minded while he's moving through earth, accomplishing natural deeds. And those are principles in themselves that I believe we should get more comfortable with. Understand that Heru is actually the sun in this picture, actually the first Trinity in recorded history, from what I understand currently. So then, something that I noticed, Asar usually is credited as a netter associated with the afterlife because he died. And that green skin. Usually I've heard people say that he's green because he's like a walking corpse. I actually disagree, in the sense that if the underworld is just the world lower than the higher consciousness world, then that's Earth. I believe that some of the netters are green, not because they're decaying corpses, but because it's depicting that they're in tune or in harmony with Earth, that they're in tune with nature. So we actually see the picture of someone who's managed to move in both the natural and the spirit and have harmony in both. That's also true with Ptah. Ptah isn't a decaying corpse, and I don't have that picture available right now, but you can look it up. It's just Ptah. He's also green, and I believe that he also represents. I believe that he also represents harmony with nature, harmony with the natural world, harmony with the universe. And that's also because I understand that the principle of Ptah represents divinity trapped in humanity. So when divinity becomes trapped in humanity, humanity is in harmony with nature. So bringing it back again, the concept that I'm getting from the whole journey of Ra is our own consciousness. I've heard people say that this journey is a depiction of our soul moving between the afterlife and the natural world, somewhat as a form of reincarnation. But I don't believe that. I believe that this is the same journey that we undertake every day. And sadly, many of us are losing, in that we're supposed to stay in a divine mindset and then try our divinity against something that's unlike us to prove that it remains the same. So we get a chance every day to test our divinity against carnality. We get to test our higher consciousness amongst a world full of lower consciousness, or as the Bible says, be in the world but not of the world. So I don't want to ramble too long, but that's what's been on my mind all day, and I said I had to get this video out. So give me some feedback. Let's talk in the comments. If you want to talk on Discord, let's talk on Discord. All those links are in the description. But that's it.